All right, the property prequel, be in the know before you buy. Nathan, how are you, mate?
Nathan, that's very formal, but I'm very well. Matthew, how are you, mate?
Mate, very well, very well. Firstly, last week's ep, Rob Greyer, half of the team at Greyer, one of, I'd say, Australia's most reputable and in-demand builders at the moment. If you haven't checked out Greyer's stuff online, like, crazy. But, yeah, we got a real insight behind the scenes with Rob, founder of Greyer. Unreal.
Big time. Heard a lot about them, had seen their work in Brisbane. They're now sort of moving down the M1 to the Gold Coast and getting stuck into a few exciting projects here. But they've got a real point of difference with their product, don't they, the Greyer boys? So, if you haven't listened to that one, have a listen because some really good insights as always.
Yeah, not just on the real estate front, heaps of tips there for buyers in his personal life, also doing the developments, but a lot on where he sees the market heading as well, which is going to give some good indication from people who are in the game day in, day out. So, really, really good guess. And, mate, we rolled on into another big one. Jeez, we keep nagging. They keep coming.
Unbelievable. This is I'm looking forward to this one. This has been someone that I've admired for a long time, doing great things, and this will be a great chat.
Yeah, it'll be good. And not by popular demand. We're always getting people saying different guesses. So this guy's definitely up there as one of the best, not only – I'd say T20 cricket's just wound up. I'm putting it like the all-rounder, the classic all-rounder. I don't know where to start with this guest, but today we're really fortunate. We got fresh out of Sydney. He's straight off a plane on the scenes of the Gold Coast. He's found a new lease of life here on the Gold Coast. He's here. We're going to chat to why he's here as well, but we're going to get some insight into the great. So we've got Darren Palmer. So I'm just going to leave it as all-round and he can dive into his specialty because there's a lot to go through. But Darren, mate, thanks so much for popping into the Gold Coast and coming on board.
Can you be my person that introduces me to everything always? Because that was the best introduction ever.
He's pretty good.
Mate, talk about being talked up.
Mate,
and it's just us down from here.
We got 45 minutes to go. This could end anywhere.
Mate, it's always key. I really respect you, regardless of the jokes aside. It's mainly for the multifaceted of skill set, mate. So I guess what I want to know is who's Darren Palmer from the get-go? Like whereabouts are you actually even from?
Queensland, mate.
Oh, you Queenslander?
Yeah.
Queenslander.
I'm from Gladstone.
Gladstone?
Yeah.
Central Queenslander?
Yeah, from Central Queensland.
Nice
No
one.
way.
I
knew you were soul to the earth, real rock solid bloke. Just back it up.
Yeah, well,
There you go.
can't you tell from accent?
Yeah.
No, I grew up in Gladstone, Central Queensland.
Wow.
I was a child in the 80s, early 80s.
Yep.
Wow.
I was born in the 70s.
Yep.
So let's just
Jeez.
date stamp me, right? Clearly, properly middle-aged.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can we get the skincare routine just quietly post?
I may be married to a skincare expert, yes. But yeah, so I had that upbringing of growing up in Central Queensland, industrial. All my mates grew up to be tradies and plumbers and carpenters and sparkies and stuff, and designer. Didn't really fit into Gladstone. So off I popped and studied in Rockhampton, which is kind of beef capital of Australia. And then Brisbane and
So did all your schooling Central Queensland?
Did all my schooling in Gladstone, lived there until I was 17.
Wow.
Lived for 3 years in Rockhampton, studied there at TAFE of all places. Did me well. And then I finished there. I was studying graphic design. I finished there and got a job in advertising in Brisbane, moved to Brizzy for 2 years.
Yep.
And then one day I went to Sydney and had a look at the ocean in the harbour and looked up and saw the botanical gardens and the city and the harbour bridge and the opera house, that other one. And I was like, got to move here. And I moved and I had $5,000 in the bank and no job, no friends, no place to live. And everything that I owned in my car, and I just got in the car and drove down and just thought, let's see.
Wow. Sydney Harbour. It's very similar to Gladstone Harbour, isn't it?
A little less coal soot
Yeah, that's
in
right.
Sydney Harbour.
Yeah.
I love that.
So good.
And there's a reason and a purpose why me and Crossy don't do too much background, because what we always find, we get a lot of really successful people on this show, and we always find it's just like some sort of humble beginning.
Always.
You see the big smoke and the things now, but it's really cool to see where people come from, and
Love
it gives him inspiration. So just take us back quickly, because I really love that.
Yep.
Like Central Queensland, I did not expect that at all. Where did that inspiration come from? Because we're talking off air, real estate's in your blood. I can feel it. Where did all that come from?
Look, my parents were always really house proud. You know, my sense of style is probably not the same as theirs. Let's be clear. In their defence, my reference point is the 80s. There was a pink leather lounge, leaving it at that. Yeah. But you know, our tastes aren't the same. But I got my dad's work ethic. I've got my mum's sort of house proudness, I guess, and you know, Dad renovated everything that he could build anything he turned his mind to. He was a boilermaker. He just he's just renovated all around me all the time. It's, you know, very handy. I'm pretty good with the DIY. I can do a lot of things as long as I don't have to use a circular saw.
Yeah.
Because when I was in art college, on a Tuesday, I sliced this finger diagonally, like an inch, right, on a Tuesday. And then on the Friday, I sliced that thumb, right, a big V in that one. So in 1 week, when I was doing packaging in graphic design school, I'd lost both my thumbs. Not lost, actually, but I'd lost the ability to use them. So I don't use circular saws. I'm not much of a carpenter. I can plaster and I can paint, though.
Yeah. That's good, isn't it? That's good going. Mate, really interested to know your mum and dad. So what did they actually do, like, for a living? Like,
yeah, so Dad's a boilermaker. He worked in power plants. You know, I mean, Gladstone.
Industrial.
Yeah. So he worked at the Gladstone power station. And Mum, you know, she packed shelves and she worked in cafes, and she was just, you know, Mum.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because Gladstone I know Gladstone pretty well, actually. It's a real blue-collar town, isn't it? And, you know, Rocky's an hour away, and it's the beef capital. And Central Queensland, they roll their sleeves up and they get stuck in. And I reckon already whoever's listening is thinking, geez, Darren Palmer, I did not expect this. This guy's
I know.
Nearly lost both his thumbs. You know,
in a tragic graphic design accident. Yeah,
this is unbelievable.
What about Darren? Because what I vision, I've stayed in Yeppoon and stuff like that, and I used to play. We both played rugby league, and a lot of the best footy players I played with were from Rocky and Yeppoon and Gladstone, Blackwater.
Yeah,
Emerald. A lot of like footy. I can't like. How was school in different things? Was it a lot of like? Were you into design and all that stuff at school?
Look, I always knew, it's such a cliche, but I always knew that I wanted to make houses.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's like from the moment I knew people work for a living, I knew I wanted to make houses. Wow. I didn't know what that meant. I thought it meant being an architect, but I kind of mucked around at school too much, didn't get the grades. Yeah. And then I realized they study for 6 years and they don't make very much when they come out. I was like, that's not for me.
TAFE.
Yeah, so off I popped to TAFE with my average results. What was your question again?
Yeah, just like how was the school, like the life in there?
So I did know. I always knew that that's what I wanted to do, but it just wasn't a path that I could take. No path, you know. Yep. So I remember I was coming towards the end of year 12, and one of my best mates at the time, still a very, very good friend of mine. She's a Sparky, and her dad was like, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so she spoke to her dad, and her dad spoke to his mate, and his mate had a graphic design company in Gladstone, just went, look, if he goes and gets the qualifications, I'll give him a job when he finishes. And I was like, sweet, off I pop. I went off to TAFE, studied fine art, graphic design, and I worked there. By the time I finished my studies, I had done some work experience in Brisbane at a advertising agency. Yeah. And that was during my last semester of study, and they offered me a job before I'd finished. So I literally finished school, got in the car, drove to Brisbane, started working, and I worked my ass off and got paid bugger all. Yeah. But that was the start of kind of actually working in the design realm, even though it wasn't the design that I wanted to do. So I did that for 10 years.
Wow.
And again, carbon dating myself, 45-year-old man. Yeah. I've lived several lives. So I worked in advertising, graphic design for 10 years, owned my own business, Moved to Sydney, did that when I moved to Sydney. And then one day I was with a friend of mine who was a dancer, and I was watching her, and when everything she did was dance. She was, if she was not dancing, she was teaching. If she wasn't teaching, she was practicing. If she wasn't practicing, she was choreographing, right? Every single facet of her life, all day, every day, was dance. And I was like, that's what you do if you're passionate about something. Yeah. And I'm not passionate about graphic design. I'm good at it. I'm okay at it, but I'm not great at it. I'm never going to win any awards with it, and I'm not really that passionate about it. But it was paying for my mortgages.
Yeah.
You know, so I was like, right, Christ. And, you know, I got into property at the same time I was sort of coming off the end of wanting to be a graphic designer. So myself and 3 friends bought a house on the outskirts of Sydney, and then we kind of leveraged that into another house that was in Potts Point in the middle of Sydney, which is an amazing spot.
Yep.
Brilliant neoclassical building, quite a well-known pair of buildings in Potts Point. And we were just lucky enough to know someone that lived in the building, and we knew that there was a place that was coming up for sale. It had a cockroach problem. It smelled like ferret's piss. And every room was painted a different colour. But we bought it knowing that I would spend a year to renovate it. And I renovated a lot of it with my own hands. I plastered a lot of stuff. Wow. You know, that it had all this amazing detailed cornicing. And I moved rooms around and stuff and you know, made it function better. But in doing that, I also had to get my mate to chase in a cable through this beautiful plaster ceiling. And so I got corner cement and like patched it up and then blocked it out and then just got on a ladder and carved it all out by hand myself to fix all this cornicing.
Unreal.
Yeah. Jeez. So, and that like I got that from my dad. Yep. You know, I got this sort of like, oh, well, let's just give it a shot.
Trial and error.
So the first thing I ever designed was this apartment. The first kitchen I ever designed was this kitchen.
Wow.
And one of my mates happened to be good friends with Neil Whitaker, who at the time was the editor of Bell magazine. And it was literally the first thing I'd ever designed, and he published it in Bell.
No way. Wow. So that is, we talk about like sliding door moments.
Yeah.
Like that's, what year do you reckon that was, Darren?
That was 2004 or 2005.
Incredible.
Yeah, 2005, I'd say.
Yep.
Wow. So, yeah, just a bit of, that's good to know the backstory that he doesn't just show up and show his skills off. He's talking the talk, like he's walked it.
I love getting grubby
in the trenches.
Yeah, I love getting covered in paint.
That's good.
I love it.
Because I reckon, and I say this respectfully, mate, I reckon from the outside looking in, people wouldn't probably appreciate that about you. Yeah. Just from what they see when you just cruise in on the block on a Sunday night, you know? Yeah, but that's awesome.
A lot of real estate nous talking off air as well, and that's why I really respect it. So you do that. Was it like, all right, I love this? Like, yeah?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. It was a dream come true, and it was literally that. It was something that I only ever dreamed that I would be able to do, which was own a piece of Sydney real estate, being from where I was from.
Yeah.
You know, I never thought I'd leave the country. I never thought I would leave Gladstone. Like my possibilities that I put in place for myself were really quite limited because I just didn't think life would be very big. You know, funnily enough, I studied French at high school, didn't pay much attention, married a Frenchman. Whoops. Probably should have paid attention. So I've been in Europe several times. I've got in-laws in France. So you just never know as a young person where life's going to take you. And I certainly didn't. I really, truly just never thought I would be able to have a piece of Sydney real estate, let alone have the opportunity to renovate something that I designed myself, because I really wanted to make houses all my life, and I just had never done it. And when I made that decision to go from graphic design, where I own my own business and I was paying my mortgages with my mates, I was making fairly good money.
Yeah.
I then had no skills as an interior designer, no experience.
Wow.
No, I was unemployable, right? And I had to make a transition of working 5 days a week in a business that I owned and made good money in to 5 to 7 days a week in another business that I was going to own myself, but with no experience at all. I had to teach myself how to design that place. Thankfully, I also at the time I had two really good mates who were really amazing designers, and one of them was in France in their house, and one of them stayed in Sydney. And he came by and he had a look at our place, and I was like, "What do you think?" And he went, "You know what? I really like your aesthetic. It's really similar to mine." I was like, "Well, look, while John's overseas, can I work with you and just like tag around and learn some stuff and teach me whatever you want to teach me?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure, no worries." So I tagged along, did some unpaid work with him, did some low paid work with him. But I learned that all of the design principles that I knew and had been taught at TAFE were the foundations were the same, but all the technical knowledge was different.
Yep.
Right?
Love it.
So I got all the technical knowledge from my mate who'd been doing it for 20 years. And I picked his brain like crazy. And he was super, super generous, giving me all the information that he had. He just laid it out for me. So he taught me heaps. He's way better at it than I am. He still is. He doesn't like me telling people what his name is because he's like super humble, and I'm the opposite. Obviously. I'm like, a bit of press. Okay. But so he taught me everything, and long story short, I got to do something that I never dreamed I could do. I never believed I'd be able to do, which was renovate a piece of Sydney real estate. And that was where it all started.
Unbelievable. Really interesting, because Darren said something before about your friend who was the dancer.
Yeah.
That she lived and breathed it. And if she wasn't doing one aspect of it, she was doing another. I reckon a lot of people are doing careers or jobs that they think's okay, or they don't love it, but they probably go home every night and they're not sure what to do. They turn the TV on, they sit down, it's been a big day. But obviously yourself, mate, you had a really good self-awareness that it was paying the bills, you had a good business, etc. But it wasn't exactly, you weren't really being true to yourself. Just interested to know, what did those afternoons and nights look like when you were coming home? Did you have your head in sort of interior design books? Were you watching stuff like that? Just to give a bit of value to the listeners, because I think it's really important.
Well, remember, this is 2005, right? So watching stuff didn't exist.
Yeah,
true.
There was no...
There wasn't much,
Yeah, like I think the block may have been... I think it was early. It was like... Oh, God. When was the first block? It's like 2000...
Was you year 17 this year, or 18?
This is 18, but we had a break for a bit. But anyway, there wasn't a lot around. You know, there were magazines. There wasn't social media.
Yes.
Right? Didn't exist yet.
That's
how old I am.
That's crazy. Mate, we're similar, so...
no, you're not. So I did, but I did have this realization where I was like, hang on, if someone buys me a present, they buy me a design book, an interior design book. If I buy a magazine, it's an interior design magazine. Everything that I love and absorb and gravitate to is interior design. So what am I doing? Like, if I don't do something different, I'm going to lose it. Like, I'm clearly doing something that is okay in paying the bills, but it's certainly not where my heart lies. And you've got one life. Like, and I know that sounds grandiose to say, and it's super easy to say too, from my position now.
Yeah.
But I wasn't always in this position. I was in a position where I drove my car with $5,000 in the bank and no employment opportunities to a city that I didn't know anybody and had no job.
Yeah.
So if you think that it's very easy for me to say it now, it is, but it wasn't easy then.
I love it. What's Jess, on that, before we move on, what's a piece of advice for someone going through that feeling right now and making the leap?
Yeah. Look, the difference, this is also, it's super easy to say, but the difference, and I still have to remind myself and still get reminded by this all the time, by my husband especially. It's like the difference between succeeding and failing is keeping going. The difference between getting there and not getting there is just resilience, like just keeping on with it, because we all get petrified. We all have skin in the game. We all have stakes, and we all have the possibility that everything could explode or implode catastrophically, especially when you take risks.
Yeah.
But if you keep going, chances are you'll get somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, it might not be exactly what you thought, but if you stop, you'll never know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great advice.
Crossy, this calls for one of my quotes. I've got them. I saved them in my phone notes. He just reminded me, there's two types of pain in the world. There's the pain of discomfort and the pain of regret. Either way, whatever we want in life, you're going to come up with one of them, right? And it sounds like you chose the path of, this is going to be hard. I'm quitting my job and I'm just going to have a crack. But it sounds as well, he's laying it with something you love, because it is going to be tough. So you got to want to enjoy it, right?
And it's funny, another saying that I really love is, you know, if something's going to take time to do, and it's the time that it takes that's putting you off, do it, because the time's going to pass anyway.
Yeah.
And you'll just be further down the track, and you'll either have done it or you'll be regretting it.
Yeah.
And
So true.
started. Yeah.
So true. So you get old mate featured like in that mag, first one. Was that, as Crossy said, was that a sliding doors? Was there opportunities that you could leverage off that?
Yeah. So look, I would say if I'm good at one thing, it's working out what the opportunities are from each opportunity.
Yeah.
That's probably my greatest skill.
Love it. Yeah.
You know, I'm not the best interior designer in the world. Don't want to be. Don't care. Did want to be for a while.
Yeah.
But look, that's just not my future. I know some of them. They're amazing, but they're also super committed to the craft. And I realized ages ago that it doesn't have to be perfect to be good, and I don't have to be the best for it to be worthwhile.
Yeah.
You know?
I
Love
like
that.
it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, I lost my train of thought. I got so impressed by my own insight.
That was a banger. That's going to be
I
a
was
bit.
impressed. I love that.
I'm going to cut that up
You are.
and repeat on
I
content.
was thinking during, Strama's already cutting this.
Yeah. That's some absolute
What was the
gold.
question?
Nah, just that opportunity, because as we move forward now, you've gone through that process. We see where you're at with Sydney. You get that big break in the mag. Where did that lead, and where did we go next?
Yeah, well, that's so great, because that's a good segue to where I was actually going to go in my head. So I learned. I did some jobs. I picked up some sort of bigger and bigger scale jobs, and then you won't believe this. You totally won't believe it. But this is sort of when, you know, MySpace was big and then Facebook was big, right? And Facebook started coming out, and I was still doing graphic design stuff and interior design stuff at the same time. And one of my mates on Facebook sent me a message just saying, hey, there's this show that they're auditioning for contestants for people that have got a few years experience in interior design. So they want professionals, but only with a few years experience. You should try out. And I was like, well, I don't know about that. And I knew a few people that worked in the industry, in TV industry, and I called three of them. And one of them said, don't do it. One of them said, definitely do it. And the other one was Neil Whitaker, and he said, I can't advise you on that.
Right.
I was like, okay. So this was like, I don't know, I had probably a couple of months to audition for this thing, and I left it till second last day. And I had the flu, and I sat down in front of my iMac, and I had the little camera, and I did my little video, and they accepted me into this show. And I was cast last, or second last, I think, and I started filming like probably 6 weeks later or something like that. And that one thing changed my life. So first of all, we're in there, we're doing the promo shoot when we're, all the contestants are together, and then they bring the judges in, and Neil Whitaker was one of the judges. That's why he couldn't advise me. Because he was like, right, okay. And he'd been a real great supporter of mine up until that point. Like he'd put me in bail a few times. He'd called me a mood maker for one of the years. You know, like he was a really great supporter, and that's why I turned to him for advice. And then he was like, I can't advise you. And then I'm like, you.
So what was your gut telling you when you had someone saying don't do it, another one saying definitely do it, and Neil sort of saying, listen, mate, I can't advise you. You obviously left it to the 11th hour. What was your gut telling you along the way?
Don't do it.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, really?
Don't do it. There's too much at risk.
Amazing.
There's all people know about me at this point is that I've been in Bell a few times, and I had I was starting to build a good reputation. And if I was the first person to exit that competition, destroyed. In my head.
Yeah.
In my head, that's what it looked like.
Yep.
It's not the truth, but in my head, that's what I thought. And so I thought, oh God, man, can I do this? Like, can I take that risk? And then I had to think, if I don't do this, then what? Like,
The regret?
Yeah, exactly. I'll regret that if I don't do it. This is an opportunity that's in front of me. At least try. And you know what's random? Like, you wouldn't read this about me from the outside either, but I'm kind of a little like metaphysical, spiritual kind of guy, right?
Yeah.
I believe in that stuff.
Yeah.
I believe the universe has a plan. And I went into this group goal setting course with 10 other people where you had to write down like like Tony Robbins kind of quantifiable, discernible goal. Like on this date, I will have achieved da, 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 da. And I wanted to build PR for my business. Right, that's what my goal was. I wrote down on this thing. By this date, I will have achieved some PR for my business. And then this thing lands in my lap, and then I'm like, well, this is it. This is what I asked for. So I can't not do this thing.
Yeah,
because I'm just basically pushing away something that I asked for.
Yeah.
So do it. All right, just take the risk and do it. As it turns out, I was a finalist. Everything worked out well for me. Got nothing. $0. I did 8 houses in 8 weeks.
wow.
Yeah. Baptism of fire.
Big
Crazy.
fat zero. Yep.
And got big fat zero out of it, right? So if you ever see block contestants that don't make $100,000, I made zero.
Hey, I've been there. Yeah.
Right. So I have empathy, but I know how much work it takes. And I literally came out with it with nothing.
Wow.
Right.
But you would have been thinking, we've known you for 5 minutes, but you would have been thinking, something good will come from this. I've done the hard work. I've laid the platform. Or were you sort of second guessing yourself a little bit?
I hoped it did. And you know what? Pretty quickly it did. So I guess this is the point I was getting to. The PR for Homemade, this show, it was on Channel 9, same executive producers as The Block.
Yep.
She contacted me and she said, look, GQ want you to write an interiors article. And I'm like, I've never written anything before in my life. I was good at English at school.
Yeah.
Righto, let's give that a shot. And it just so happens, again, so it's you probably think I'm like the luckiest guy in the world, but the editor of GQ at that time was a guy that I did award school in advertising. They've got this thing called award school where they teach you to be creative. And he was in my awards school class.
Unreal.
And then he ended up being the editor of GQ. So I knew him, Nick Smith.
Yep.
Wow.
So I knew him. And so I wrote this article. It went well. And then I emailed Nick and said, hey, look, here's 16 article ideas. I want to write for you. Pick 12. And he went, yeah, all right. And that's the other thing I've learned. Like, one, if you get given an opportunity, make the most of it, do the best you can, and then also look at what other opportunities come for that one opportunity.
Yes.
And make it easy for people to say yes. You know, if you go to somebody and say, I really want to work with you, but I don't know exactly how I'm going to help, then they're like, well, I'm not putting the effort into that because you haven't, right? But I went to Nick and I was like, I've got 16 story ideas, topics. These are the synopsis of each topic. I'd love to write for you. So I became the, what was it? The God, there's a term. They gave me a little title. It was like, interior design, like.
You're nearly like the resident.
Like editor.
Yeah, of GQ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Unreal.
Right?
Yeah. Big mag.
And so I'm like, my head explodes. It was just a little title for writing an interior design page in each article of GQ.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I sort of realized that I could write, and I love to write, and it was super easy for me. And then I understood that I had this ability to pull really complicated design fundamentals into really understandable ways of people for people to be able to understand them.
Yeah.
So like really complex stuff, I can look at. That's why I do what I do now, because I can look at why things are good, whether I like it or not. And so to learn that, I sat down and I looked at, and this is way back at the beginning of my career, I looked at magazines and of work of all these designers that were doing super well, still doing super well, and I was looking at like why does this picture work so well, why does this room work so well, and then I talked to my mentor Dane. Oops, I said his name. and I'd sort of bounce things off, and he'd explain things to me, and he'd talk to me about concepts and fundamentals and stuff. And then I had this realization that I had the ability to look at something, understand it, pull it apart, and condense it down into something that's understandable, digestible, and so that people can also sort of commoditize design so that they had access to it, even if they didn't have access to people like me.
Yep.
And so then I wrote for. I wrote my first book. That sort of followed on, and then I sent the book to the editor of House and Garden, who is a friend of mine, thankfully, and she was like, "You know what? I really love your tone. I really love the way you talk when you write. Would you like to write for House and Garden?" I'm like, "Yep." That's the biggest. That was the biggest readership of interior design magazines in the country at the time. I'm like, yeah, I do. I want to do that.
You got sent on this writing path, all because someone asked you, Darren, would you be interested in doing this for GQ?
Yep.
That's incredible. But then you went away and come up with 16 ideas. See, again, so many takeaways in this.
That's what I was going to say. It seems like proposed luck, but as we all know, you create your own luck. Yeah. And one thing I know around people who are successful in industries is they create their own luck. It's maximising and leveraging opportunities. And I really love that. You went above and beyond to give them more articles. And then, again, you get an opportunity, you realise, I've got to take this and then leverage it, right? So, it's a real credit to you. So you're getting in the writing space, got a book now. So obviously the PR channels are bubbling up a bit.
Yep.
Where's the block come into it?
Yeah, so 2009 was homemade. Yep. 2010 was a bit of a hiatus. I kind of was in the wilderness, actually. And it was a bit of a scary time because I came out of the block with $0 and also I hadn't been working for 3 months, right? So I was like, yikes. Yeah. And so then I had to build the momentum back up in my business because all the leads that I would have generated during that time, they weren't there.
True.
Right? So I had nothing to work on.
Yep.
And no money.
And this lag period, yeah.
And I still had mortgages.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was shitting my pants. To be clear.
Yeah.
And that was a really, really tough time. It was really, really, really scary. I opened my piggy bank to eat. Once every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And when I say piggy bank, I mean the literal ceramic
bang
pig.
Well,
I didn't have to break it. I had a little thing at the bottom, but like
screw it back
I
up.
would open it up. I would get the money out. I would go and buy Indian takeaway, like at the corner shop for $8, so I could have a meal.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
That's how bad and scary it was. And then I got somehow, I can't remember how it was, but I did some video stuff for a property development company who was teaching people how to be property developers. Right. So they wanted me to fill in this part of their syllabus about interiors and styling for selling developments and designing for developments and stuff. So I was like, yeah, well, actually, I can do that, and I've got the skills to be able to write that stuff, so I'll do that. And then I started having to film some videos for that too. And when you start doing video stuff, if you start watching yourself, you learn a lot.
Yeah.
And you learn that this looks like this, and that this looks like this, and that there are things that you can do better, and that when you speak, if you say and R and you stumble on your words and stuff, you don't get your message across as clearly as if you can stand and present well. And I learned that stuff by watching myself, and then I had this opportunity where I'd done all this video content, and I was getting paid quite well to do that when that opportunity came. And I sort of made contact with Channel 9 again and said, hey, look, I've done all this writing. I've done lots of video stuff. Is there anything I can do? And they were like, how about you come and just be a guest judge on a challenge on the season of the block? And it was 2011. So I was like, yep, cool. So I went and did that. They liked me in that role.
Yeah.
So then they asked me the next season to come and be a guest judge in place of John McGrath, because he, Mr. Busy Man, he sometimes couldn't be there, which worked out for me.
Yeah.
So I got to fill in for him 5 times in 2012.
Wow.
And in 2013, it was my job.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Unreal.
Was it? I'm just trying to remember back. First few were in Sydney, weren't they?
My first one.
Yeah.
So the one in 2012 was in like Albert Park, something like
That's
that.
right. Yeah.
And then in 2013, my first one was in Bondi, which was literally like 5 minutes up the road from my house.
Incredible.
Wow.
So I'd get in the car on Sunday morning and drive to the site and then do my little thing and drive back home again.
And it was, so I remember John McGrath being on. It was Neil
Yeah, Neil.
and John.
So it was Neil and John.
Yeah.
So first it was John, and then it was Neil and John.
Yeah.
And then it was Neil, John, and Shayna, and that's when I started to fill in for John.
Right.
And then it was Shayna, Neil, and I. And that was in 2013. In 2013, we did 2 seasons. 2014, we did 2 seasons, I'm pretty sure. And if you count forward, this has been my 14th.
Wow.
Incredible.
I love the hustle though.
Oh, that's good, isn't
just
it?
knock on the, hey, you got anything?
I did, though.
But that's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's like you laugh about it, but it's like that's what it takes. Like people think success comes if you just twiddle your thumbs and it's going to come on your lap, right? Like I love the leverage and the hustle, and then waiting in the wings as 18th man when Johnny's out, he gets the call up
That's
and he's
right.
like, I'm taking this.
ready to go.
I'm ready. Getting fast forward and
5
now,
minutes away.
fast forward.
Meanwhile, everything worked out for John McGrath at the time. He was like, he was doing his IPO, and he was
John's doing okay.
very, very busy.
He's doing all right.
right?
Yeah.
So that's why he moved away from that role, and that's why I got to do that
Unreal.
job.
Slid.
Got he listed. Yeah. There you go.
Did you notice a shift in your, I guess, business, professional career from the block?
Bingo. So 2012, when I was the guest judge, those 5 EPs, I got a blind call from Carpet Court and from their marketing director, and they went, hey, we would like you to be our ambassador. And I'm like, sweet, let's do that. And then because I had this opportunity and I had the show, I was like, well, I need management. So I went and found a talent manager.
Yep.
And then with that first ambassadorship, which I've had since,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
I've been with them for 10 years.
Awesome.
Great brand.
Brilliant
Yeah.
brand, the biggest in the country.
Yeah.
And also my first and 10 years of it.
Wow.
They've been around for 50 years. I've been there for 10 of it.
Nice.
That's nuts,
That's
right?
crazy. Yeah.
Isn't it nuts?
Are you the golden boy at Carpet Court?
I don't know. Oh, look, they're doing pretty well before me.
Can we call in the Darren Palmer discount?
I can.
Yeah.
But then, so then that happened, and then I was the ambassador for them, and then surreal stuff happens. Like in 2015, I went to Audi and I was like, I would like to be an ambassador, and they went, no, thank you.
Interesting.
And then 2 months later, they called me and went, actually, yes, we'd like you to be our first design ambassador in Australia.
Right.
And I was like, okay, let's do that. And I was with them for 7 years.
Yeah. Wow.
And just one opportunity gives you another opportunity. And I've done all sorts of crazy, I think the most important thing to get to now, and actually was only doing this yesterday when I was on my social media, because the Lego Masters comes out on Sunday. I've just voice over Shayna's new show, and I haven't done either of those things before in my life.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right?
cool.
And I have to do lots of stuff that I've never done often. Yeah. And I'm always scared. I'm always petrified that I'm going to screw it up. Dead set.
Yeah.
I'm fatalistic, and I always think it's going to just. Yeah, have you heard the diagram of the creative process?
No.
Oh, it's so good. Look, I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's like this. So this is excellent.
Yeah.
I'm excellent. This isn't going to work. I'm crap. Actually, this might be okay. No, this is good. I'm a genius.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it's literally this arc of
Yes.
this is going to be fun. Oh no, this is terrible, and I'm a piece of shit. And actually no, it's great. And
what time frame are we talking here? Like,
who knows?
It's gonna be quick.
But it's always that with me.
It's always
that with me. I always think that it's going to be like, I'm like, yeah, this is super exciting.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's so interesting, because people that are listening, hang on, Darren Palmer, he does the block. Like, what's he talking about? So it's good to know he's the guy from Central Queensland. That's, we've all got our issues.
Like things to work. Yeah,
Constantly petrified that I'm going to screw things up. Basically,
I'm interested. Does that come into a bit of perfectionist vibes? Do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I am absolutely a perfectionist, and thankfully, I haven't always mastered it. I don't always master it, but I did realize early on that my natural tendency is want to do everything at 100%, but I'm better off doing 80 things at 80% than 10 things at 100%.
Right.
And it's a compromise that I have to force myself to do. So I could obsess about everything, or I could do a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I would rather do a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah. And get them done at a decent level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, my 80% is better than a lot of people's 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it will paralyze you. Perfectionism will paralyze you. It will stop you from even trying sometimes.
100%.
You are better off just accepting that if you've done as much as you can, then that's the job.
I heard this one the other day, Cross. They call it like the 70-30 rule. Wait till you 70% got it and just act, because you'll figure out the rest of the 30%. Because if you're waiting for it to be 100%, could be waiting a long time, right?
Bingo. There's never going to be the right time.
Right.
I tell my son this all the time, that thought just literally left my head. I'm like, fatherly advice, gone.
Happens on the daily.
Wow, I am old. God, what was I going to say?
They're waiting for 100%. If people wait for it to be 100%, they never start.
Yeah, I don't know.
Gone.
It'll come to me later.
It'll come.
I'll be like, oh, that.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, Darren, with mate, you're obviously a perfectionist with everything that you do, but what about, you alluded to it with, when the phone rang, say, for carpet court, what about stuff that's outside of your expertise? Like you said straight away, geez, I probably need to get a talent manager for that, even with your own, say, financial affairs, which we won't obviously go into. But how do you go sort of letting go of things like that? Because obviously you stay in your lane with stuff you're good at. Can you delegate the other stuff okay, or is that hard as well?
It took me a long time. A really, really long time. It's probably one of the hardest and longest lessons that I had to make. And it held me back for a really long time, because, again, it's that thing of like, if I do it, it's going to be perfect.
Yeah.
And just letting go and going, it doesn't have to be my way to be the right way. And also, I slow things down. If I'm the conduit in the middle of everything, there's only so much I can do, and there's only so much I can give my attention to. So if everything has to come through me all the time, I'm screwed. There's not enough time. So it was a really hard lesson, and it was something that was really hard learned. But when I learned it, when I was able to understand that you can, you're better off finding people that are great at doing the different things, especially the things that you hate doing.
Yes.
Like, I hate bookkeeping.
Yep.
So I don't do it. I've got an amazing accounting firm. Like my accountants are brilliant. I've got bookkeepers. I don't like to draw stuff. I've got draftspeople for that. Like, I collaborate really well, but I realize I'm not a great manager. I'm not a good boss. I'm a great collaborator.
Yeah.
So I am very, very good to work with, not good to work for.
Yeah. Self-awareness.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask just Darren quickly on a business front, because quite savvy, as I said, there's courses, there's some e-commerce plans, there's the homewares things, and so you've got a few finger in a few pies. So you're what I call the modern day entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Just on that really quickly, what's your advice in business? Like, I mean, that's some good self-awareness there, but what's your advice to people to be successful in the business world?
I don't feel like I'm qualified for that. To be honest, I just, it's that. That's what I was going to say. I was doing it yesterday when I was looking at my Instagram. I was like, it looks so different on the outside to what it actually looks like on the inside. When you look at, you kind of alluded to it yourself when we started talking, like what I look like from the exterior isn't what you're getting now. Like you get you better understanding now of
100%
what it actually must look like from me from the inside. And it's not one big lump of stuff. It's a whole bunch of little things, and each one of those things comes with stress and pushing myself out of a boundary and being uncomfortable and being petrified and worrying if it's all going to stop and if it's all going to financially go up in flames. I have no idea. But how do you know? Like, I believe thoroughly, and I love real estate. Like, real estate is my true love. That's why I do everything that I do, because I love real estate. But real estate is all about due diligence, and that, I think, is probably one of the best ways I would advise people is always do your due diligence. Like, understand what you're getting into, understand every facet of it that you can, so that you can make the best and most informed decision. And I understand real estate. I get it. There's this thing in New South Wales. I don't know if every state has it. New South Wales has this great thing called the New South Wales Valuer General, and it's a website and it's free. So all that core data stuff, you get it for free. You can look up every sale in every street forever. Well, at least until I think it's early 2000s or something. Anyway, you got a good 20 years of data, and you can narrow it down to a street, right? So if I'm ever looking at property, I will research every sale that is comparable in terms of amenity and square meterage and area, and I will understand that market back to front before I do anything. And I'll watch, and like, it's good to watch, websites and realestate.com and domain.com and whatever it is. But that specific due diligence of getting comparable data and having the skill to get comparable data, especially if you're a real estate investor, and especially if you're having to either value your property for a valuer or to assist a valuer, because I love doing that. I'm like, hey, here's some comparable data. How about this one, this one, this one, this one? Did you know those ones? And they're like, I'm like, have you seen this one? That's exactly like this one. And they're like, actually, you're right. I'm like, I know, I've done the work. That due diligence is everything, and I think it's everything in everything always.
Sounds like
Good advice, man.
sharpens the saw before you go out to cut, right?
That's brutal. I'm much
that.
more cuddly than that.
No, it's true though. We always give that feedback to buyers, right? Before, if you're looking at an area to buy, get micro focus, right? Because as you know, Darren, there's markets within markets, there's pockets within pockets, all different land values, right? And different things like the aspect, the square meterage, all the things you allude to. Get micro focus before even going, because it sounds like you could spot a deal before it popped up, basically.
I think what I understand really well, and funnily enough, from growing up in Gladstone, is that there are things that drive growth, and it boils down to supply and demand.
Yep.
Always,
Yep.
right? The end.
Yep.
And Gladstone's property market was always based on who was coming in to build something, work on infrastructure,
Yep.
work in industry, and then when that project finished,
Gone.
out they went, and the property prices followed down.
Yes.
Right.
Love it.
Whereas there's blue chip areas, which is they're the areas that I like, because there's always going to be demand, and especially when there's limited stock. Right. So if there's high demand and low supply, that's what I like. Because that's the stuff that I find. I don't have to time a market that way.
Yes.
As long as I'm in and out of the same market,
Yep.
I'm cool, right? I don't have to punt on,
Yes.
there's a new infrastructure project coming here and there's a highway coming through, and do all that work, because that you can make heaps of money doing that. But I don't. I just don't have the time.
You're not taking
as opposed to timing.
Bingo.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think, that's the way I approach everything. It's I look at all of the data, and I'm very pragmatic and mathematical about data. And, because I'm a renovator, I look at comparable sales data in the lower end of the same comparable and the higher end.
Yeah.
So I'll go, okay, that's the same square meterage, the same location, the same outlook, the same opportunity for bedrooms and bathrooms and blah, 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 proximity to transport, rah, rah, rah. And then here's the same stuff in the same area with the same constraints, but finished to that higher level. And then you go, right, so that's worth X and that's worth Y. And the deficit between those two is this number. And then if I can renovate within that amount of money, and I've got enough in there for me after tax, after all the holding costs and all the other stuff and stamp duty and all that jazz, then you can still turn a profit. Great. That model doesn't work that well right now.
Yes.
I don't think it's as viable as it used to be.
Yeah.
But buying and holding is great. If you can afford the interest rates right now. And I laugh because yikes. But if you can understand data and you can make every decision you make a data driven decision, then you're going to be making better decisions. Full stop.
Yeah, you're not just taking a punt from Larry the Uber driver told you this area is one to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like betting on horses.
It is.
Yeah, legit. And then that overarching all that great fit, supply versus demand ratio is something always and sounds like you're always looking for scarce assets, scarce land bank, because at the end they're not building more land, right?
Bingo.
Yeah.
Well, except in places where they are, right? So, there's my first investment ever was on the outskirts of Sydney, and it was converted farmland. So that was a long-term investment that I would have had to wait 15 years to really realise.
Yes.
And I just didn't have the time.
Yep.
So it was the worst investment I ever made at that time.
But over time, with urban sprawl and that, it's okay. But
If I'd held it,
yes,
but I couldn't afford to hold it.
sure.
Yeah.
My money was better spent
Yep.
And another
on something.
opportunity.
Yeah, and with something that had a bit faster yield.
Yep.
Yeah.
A bit faster uptick in terms of growth, because that sort of growth uptick was what I was able to leverage off to
Go
expand.
the next. Yeah, perfect.
Love it. No, really good feedback there.
It's so good. Really conscious of your time, mate, and we're so appreciative. But just a couple of one thing I was driving here today thinking about, Trams, and you boys will probably both laugh at me, but you hear every year about trends, what's on trend this year and that. And I watch the block and I watch, certain things with fashion and that, and they talk about, that was on trend last year, but this year, this is the new trends. And I often think to myself, at the start of each year, does Darren Palmer and Neil Whittaker and that get in a room and go, this is the new trend. That's no longer on trend. Mate, can you please clear this up for the layperson idiot like myself, Darren? How do these trends start and who decides what's on trend each year?
Okay. So
we're about to get a masterclass here,
look,
so tune it up.
You make a joke. I did have this conversation with Neil Whittaker years ago, though, and I was like, how do people not see this? And he's like, they don't see it because they don't know what you know.
Yeah.
So people can't see what you see so obviously because they don't have the background and the skill that you've got.
Yeah.
I'm like, but how do they not see that that's
they're
coming?
Just idiots like me.
No, but it's like if you speak to someone that works in the financial markets, they know all the indicators of everything because they've seen it all before, right?
Yep.
Because patterns repeat. Yeah. So they know when there's this market happens that this is going to follow and then this is going to happen because the psychology of people and the way that they buy and the way they consume and the way they react to risk and all that stuff, it's predictable. It happens in financial markets. It's the same with trends. It's exactly the same.
Right.
So think of a trend like a pendulum, right? So it either swings toward or swings away from whatever was before it. And so that's why you'll have, here's a perfect example. I love this example because it's a recent one. So there was this thing called COVID and it made everybody stay inside and wash their hands a lot, right? Don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah.
And what that did, and this is more kind of last year, somewhat the year before, two trends came out of it. And I could see one coming. I didn't see the other one coming, but I saw one coming. I knew that early 2000s minimalism, that sort of BKH sort of like, glass splashback kind of look, that really clean, super minimalistic look, that was definitely going to come back because it has come back every few decades, right? You've got brutalism, you've got that, like it follows, it peaks and troughs.
Yep.
So I could see that early 2000s minimalism was going to inevitably come back at some point. What I didn't see happening was that people's need for sterility was either going to drive them in one of two directions. They were going to want to bring it into their home and have something that was easy to clean, eat like lots of like nice clean surfaces that you could always keep perfectly clean, right? Or this other thing happened. So there's a trend called normcore, which was comfortable, nondescript, very sort of beigey kind of. It was mostly in fashion. Yeah, fashion interiors aren't that dissimilar, but fashion moved faster. And then the continuation of normcore was this thing called cottagecore. And cottagecore was about nostalgia. And it's about grandma's house.
Right.
So florals and doilies and just layers of stuff because it made people feel safe and like they could mentally go back to a place that was pre-COVID, pre all this risk and to a much more kind of friendly, nostalgic space. So people wanted to bring that into their homes. And both those things happened at the same time. And I think they happened for the same reason, but it was a response to stimulus. Right? So one person wanted to have sterility in their house as a response. One people wanted nostalgia as a response. That is the way trends work.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So trends aren't just like, Pantone saying this purple is the new purple.
Yeah.
Right? The trends are more about, or at least the interesting thing about trends is the psychology behind why people do what they do and what is driving their behaviors. And it's the same, as I said, with like financial markets, it's the same with consumer behaviors. It's the same, and they're either going to run away from something or run towards something. And then trends do the same thing. They either go... they're a continuation of something or they're a reaction or rejection of something.
The pendulum's a great example, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, but in the past, you would have like eras, you know, where you'd have
yeah.
It would line up with a monarch, for example. You know, like Versailles. You know, they created a whole movement. But that was for the reign of Louis XIV, whatever his name is. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so these eras would follow each other, and then you would have they would get shorter and shorter and shorter, and then you'd have Art Deco and Art Nouveau, and you know, and then sort of Bauhaus and stuff like that, shorter and shorter, shorter, and then they stopped following each other, and then they started happening at like over the top of each other. So instead of there being this was a reaction to this, following that, they all turn on their side, and all that happens at the same time, but they're all happening for different reasons. So it's really hard to pinpoint why exactly something happens, but when you look back retrospectively, or if you have a view of how human behavior, like why people do what they do, you can kind of see things coming.
Yep.
And interesting.
It's so interesting.
Really good feedback there for, I guess, everyone's getting on the renovation. You know, I get questions, what are buyers looking for? That's a really good example onto hitting certain trends. It's a bit deeper to the core with human psychology and things like that.
It's way more interesting than like what color cushion's going to be, right? Like it's so easy to be like, I don't want to be like, oh, it's so worthy what I do. I fluff cushions for a living, right? Like that's what I do. Yeah. But there is a really interesting facet to the psychology of human behavior and why people like what they like and why they want what they want.
I'm interested to know, before we wrap up, Darren, 3 Darren Palmer overarching tips with interior design. Just blanket.
Haven't you noticed how much I like to talk?
Just give us 3. Just give us 3 of your best for punters like us in the interior design space. If you could just have 3 on your Darren Palmer must dos with interior design.
Oh, it's easy. I say them all the time. Something that interior designers do that people don't do is write a brief. Right? We always, professionals, we will have a conversation with a client, and we will have this conversation. We'll ask them a bunch of questions about why, what, you know, how, what do you want, what don't you want, what are the inclusions, what are the absolute must not haves, who's using it, what are they using it for, what are their ages, what are their abilities, what are their constraints, what mood do you want it to feel like, how do you want it to feel when you come home, how do you want your guests to feel, what colours are important to you, what style are you gravitating towards. All those things get amalgamated into a brief. We do it as professionals. People don't. People don't do it enough. I think people are starting to get it better because I've been banging on about it for 15 years. But it is something that you do. If you have a written document that has all of that and your timeline and your budget in it, then you've got this Bible to refer back to whenever you make a decision, whatever that decision is. The same thing happens in terms of having visual stimulus, so visual reference. So whether that's a Pinterest board or things that you tear out of magazines, that's the second piece of advice. Get good visual reference so that you can see what the thing that you think you can picture in your head looks like in reality, and you have got reference points for things like common patterns, common materials, common colours, you know, stuff stylistically that you can refer back to. And then the third piece of advice would be the edit is as important as sourcing. So knowing what not to buy is as important as knowing what to buy. So planning something out, knowing, like I've just done this Your Townhouse, right? So this is my 8th one that I've done. I do that. You probably don't know this either. I've done the last few remotely, completely. Usually I do them after I've seen them once, and I have to design every facet of, like, usually it's every piece of furniture and inclusion and plate and fork and cushion, right? This one I designed we just demolished 2/3 of the house and built it from the ground up. And I had to specify how big the rooms were, where they were, where the bathrooms were located, where the powder room was located, how to separate the living spaces, how to get that sort of 5-bedroom Australian contemporary country brief that was shared with the block that was being done at the same time, which is making me shit myself, frankly. But that sort of the ability to do that after, one, I saw this house once, and it was pre-reno,
Yeah, wow.
Right. So I'm in this house and nothing's in the same spot anymore. And I went away with the plan and went, okay, let's redesign that. And I worked with the architect, and then we got to a point where I was happy, and then I thought, man, and they actually changed the parameters of the brief, and they pulled the roof off this thing and rebuilt the roof. So what that did is change my parameters and my constraints. And I was like, well, actually, I don't need to put that there anymore to deal with this ceiling line. I can put it anywhere I want. And so I redesigned the house 4 times. That was fun. But what I did do is have the ability to see everything in intricate detail, know what I wanted the whole project to look like, specify everything, and then buy. Something that people do, a mistake people make a lot is they buy things they like, but not things that work together. And you see this, in wealthy people's houses a lot. It's like, that's an expensive thing that doesn't work with that expensive thing.
Just a mismatch.
Yeah, right. But you can also see great style in people without money, because they've thought about the entirety of a project, not just the individual piece.
Love it.
So the edit is really, really important. So knowing how to specify, knowing what the overarching thing is going to be, knowing what every single detail of the thing is going to be is really important, but also knowing what not to do, what not to buy, not what to have is super, super important as well.
Unreal.
Let's give a bit of a shout out to your town. It's obviously big on the Gold Coast. Matt and I,
$6.2 million big.
It's and we've both been involved in previous careers, selling real estate. Funnily enough, for McGrath, and have been through prize homes, have sold prize homes. It's a great thing, mate. How did the Your Town thing come about? It's probably another universe moment, like many Darren Palmer times.
Yeah, that's been 8 years as well. This is my 8th one. Yeah, how funny. Okay, so it was a random phone call. It was a phone call. They called me up and went, "Hey, would you be interested?"
Yep.
And I was like, let's give it a shot.
Yeah, so it would have been Boys Town then.
It was Boys Town then. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've never done that before. Okay, sure, let's give it a shot. It's a charity I believe in. They do great work. The money really makes a huge difference. And I made the joke before about fluffing cushions for a living. And that's really what my job feels like a lot of the time. Like, I'm either helping myself or I am helping businesses, and whether that's designing an apartment building or being an ambassador for a brand or having my own products or whatever it is, it's all commercial.
Yep.
I've got a very commercial, you've probably worked it out, I've got a very commercial mind. This thing is the one thing that I get to do where I can use my skills and I can amplify my impact by doing what I do well and helping a whole bunch of people.
Serve
awesome.
Community, serve something greater than yourself.
Bingo. And it just, man, it feels good.
Yeah.
It's not altruistic. I get a buzz out of it. I get such a kick out of it. So that's how it came about. They rang me up and said, "Would you like to give it a shot?" And I was like, "Yep, let's give it a shot." But what I didn't realize was how hard it is. Like, it's really, really tricky because, the first ones, I basically just furnished the places and stuff. But I still had to do that. So what you probably don't realize is those houses get put together in 2 days.
2 days?
Yeah. So I arrive. So it's become a really finely tuned machine.
Yeah, of
But
course.
basically, this time around, so I worked on it for 6 months. I designed the thing 4 times, like I said. I specified every tile, every hinge, every lever, everything, every light fitting, every position of every light in this place. But in terms of the furnishings and decor and all that other stuff, they look like lived-in houses. But if the thing isn't there on the day, it's not coming.
Yeah.
Right.
So I have to think about, and I drive myself up the wall. I've had to get out of bed I go to bed at 10 o'clock, get out of bed, go work on my computer until 1 o'clock in the morning, then go back to bed because I had to get this thing out of my mind because I'm sitting there in my mind. Thankfully, I think in 3 dimensions. I think in 3D. So And I know that sounds like a weird thing to say, but I can close my eyes and I can see everything in intricate detail. So I sit and I picture the rooms in my head and go, okay, there's going to be a blank wall there, so I need a light there. That's going to be, so that's where the bed's going to go. So and the bedside is going to have to be that side. So I'm plotting it out in real terms on a 2-scale plan, but I'm also fleshing it out in my head going, okay, but the aspect this way is going to be this, so you'll see that in the background. So when we're doing photographic assets, I'm thinking about what that looks like, what angles they're going to take, how the light's going to hit that, what's in the background. That's going to be a blank wall. I need something for there. And I'm like, every facet of everything, but it's got to be there the day I get there. Because if it's not there, I can't just pop to the shops.
Because it's not there.
That's it.
Is that a learned skill, or is that something you're born with, you reckon?
I think I was born with that, and I didn't know I had it until I had to use it.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a better interior designer than I was a graphic designer, because I think in 3D, and graphic design was, in my head, a 2D a medium, and I think in 3D.
Yeah.
So I can do that in intricate detail in 3 dimensions.
Unreal.
Amazing. And I'm sorry, mate, I just want to ask one thing, and not to get stuck on the block, but when you go and judge the block and you walk in knowing that how your brain works, do you get frustrated and go, why can't they see that? Why can't they see that?
Yeah. So 2 things. Yes. Yeah. And you've probably seen, the funny thing about the block is the people don't know, and contestants definitely don't know this, but we don't get told anything.
I wondered that.
Nothing.
Yeah, really?
Right? We barely know their names. They are pictures on a wall with a number and their names in the production office.
House 5.
Yep. So for half of it, I have to ask the executive producer who's in the room with us. I'm like, what's this couple's name again? Right? So they take it really personally. I don't know who they are.
Yeah.
And I have no gauge of who they are because we don't get to meet them.
Yes.
So there's that, right? And then it's so funny because we also don't know what happens during the week, and I watch it on the telly with you. Right? So I get to know them, and I get to see the story with you. So I see what I see. I see the finished result. And so often there'll be this thing that will be like, bang, like this thing. Why did they do that? Blah, blah, blah. Like there was one season a couple of years ago, it was Shannon and Simon Voss. And I've crawled underneath the bed to have a look for a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And they'd left their iPhone recording under the bed.
I remember it. Yeah.
Looked like a stitch up, didn't it?
Yeah.
Wasn't.
Oh.
That was me looking for a PowerPoint under a bed.
Right.
Because that's what I do. I get down on my hands and knees. I pick things up. I look under things. I go into all that detail just because I'm a nutcase. And, and sometimes you stumble across something that has been a massive story element that week.
Yep.
And we just know because it's not right. And then after we finish, the executive producer will be like, so interestingly,
yes,
that played out during the week, and that's the one thing that you brought up today.
Interesting.
And that's why the contestants always think, it's a stitch up. No, it's not. Just wrong.
Because you see it. So like this year with Sharon and Encore, they had no PowerPoint on the island bench in, and again, like what you're saying is you don't see any of that. You just get there and logically go, why is there no bloody PowerPoint?
Bingo.
Unreal.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah. Most of it's logic.
Yeah.
And most of those things in their defense are forced errors.
Right.
They're either inexperience or forced errors, or things that you go, man, I wish I'd done that. And they know, and then they hope that we don't see it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like this season, like it was Rachel and Ryan, I had a meeting with them, and they did that beautiful lounge room. It was so insane. I loved it. But she was like, I want a 10, 10, 10, right? Neil gave her 10. Yep. Shana gave her a 10. I gave her 9.5 because I sat down with them that week and spoke through everything. And I said, you know what you need? You need a lamp. And they're like, we've poured the slab. We don't have any ability to put a PowerPoint in. And I'm like, that's cool. And then I see a lamp in the middle of the room. And I'm like, hang on a second. There can't be a PowerPoint there for that lamp. What is driving? So I pick these muscles aren't just for show. Yeah. So I pick up the sofa and I'm like, it's powered by a battery pack.
Right.
And that's why they didn't get half a point from me because I looked.
Yeah. It's savage. It's good. It's good feedback. Anyone who wants to be on the block in future, this guy, attention to detail, can't escape it.
Could talk to him for hours, but mate, we obviously want to let you go and enjoy the Gold Coast while you're here, mate. So
I've warned you. I told you. No, you get me started. I will keep talking.
We're happy if you're happy, mate.
Mate, last thing, Darren. What's the legacy piece for you? Like where do you see? What's the future plans for you? You think,
mate? I'll be happy if it doesn't just all stop. It's mind blowing.
Just riding the wave.
It's mind blowing that I get to do the stuff that I get to do. Yeah. Like to be honest with you, I don't take enough time to acknowledge things. Achievements and stuff. I'm always thinking about the next thing or what I haven't done. Yeah. And I was saying to a friend of mine yesterday, I oscillate between one of two things. I'm not doing enough or I've bitten off more than I can chew. And I literally run those two things at the same time often. So I'm like, I want more, I want to do more. But at the same time, I have to be really careful because I have burned out before. I've done it. Yeah. It's not fun. Funnily enough, it was after I did TV the first time. It was really, really hard, and you don't want to ever burn out. Trust me, because it takes some time and some work to put yourself back together. Yeah. So I'm very conscious that I want to run and I want to push, but I also have to stop. I've kind of got two speeds. Yeah. Where I'll either I'll achieve heaps, and then I'll just not do anything. And I used to think that my time in my business as a business owner needs to be spent all the time doing something, making PR, doing always having something turning, right? But often, and I think of it like this, the NBN, so the success that was, data going down a cable, yeah? So it can only handle so much data, and if you're pushing data up that cable, the stuff that's supposed to come to you can't come back as fast. If you stop pushing, then it can come. Sometimes you just need to stop.
Good analogy. Really good.
So the answer is I don't know what's next. I'm doing another apartment building very soon. I'm doing some renovations and some small development of my own. Working on my product range, increasing in the education platform. Cool. There's always plates spinning.
Yeah. Sometimes, you just want to smell the roses.
I'm shit at that. Yeah. I'm terrible at it.
That's good. It's good feedback. I'm really interested to know. What do you reckon? Hit him with a bit of a fast five.
Fast five, to finish off. I reckon this will be some good answers.
Yeah. So Darren, first thing that comes to mind. Any dwelling type, knowing you're a real estate, this will be really interesting. Any dwelling type, any location in the world, all right? First thing that comes to mind. So first one is, where's the holiday pad?
Byron.
Ooh.
House.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, just over at Waddy Goes or somewhere, or maybe in town.
I got one in Suffolk, and I'm pretty happy with it.
That's a good spot.
Mate, I grew up beside Suffolk.
No.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
It's heaven.
I lived in...
it's Old Byron.
It's Old Byron, mate. Yeah, I lived in Wareham Street. Just runs between sort of Alcorn and Armstrong, yeah.
Okay. Well, ours are just off Alcorn.
Unreal.
Yeah, and it's next to the nature escarpment.
Nice one.
It backs onto all that greenery.
Yeah.
And it's right next to the ocean.
So... do you get a bit of time to smell the roses there? No.
No, and all it is to me is a project. It's not. So that's not all it is. But what drives me mental is I want to do what I want to do. I've already designed that house. Designed. Here's a nut story. Fast five my ass. Here's a crazy story. Yeah. So I hadn't even signed the offer yet, but we knew we were going to offer in this place. And that's actually the thing that I had to get out of bed. I went to bed at 10. I had to get out of bed because I had to design what was in my head for this house. The day before we made the offer, I'd already designed the house.
Wow. Crazy.
Yeah, no, you get it?
Do you sleep? Do you ever sleep?
I sleep all right.
Interesting. Byron. Byron. Vibes down there. High. Oh, I love it. All right, the next one is just a blue chip investment. bit of a cash flow cow. What area, or it can be any market in the world and dwelling type?
All I know is education and real estate. So anything that's got those two things in it, I'm there.
In terms of property, like if you were to pick a dwelling somewhere in the world that, right, you're investing somewhere, blue chip investment.
Mate, I'm happy with what I've got, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I did have this big dream one day. One day I'd have like an apartment in Paris, and I'd have like, an amazing apartment in Madrid, and I'd have like some sort of fantastic like sprawling villa in like, South America or whatever. I don't need that stuff anymore. So I would say anywhere where the numbers stack up.
Love it.
That's the place.
The Potts Point one might have been it's hard to beat, isn't it?
It was a cracker, but I live in Bondi, so I can't complain.
Great spot. What about the Bucks party?
Wow. Well, I was my best mate's best man, and he got a gay man to do his straight Bucks party. It was lunch. It was lunch, and you know what was funnier? I
love it.
It was lunch with all of his mates, a whole bunch of straight tradie dudes. And my husband and I were there, and we ordered like juniper gin, something, and and our drinks arrive, and mine was purple, Olivier's was pink, everybody else was having beers. Yeah. I think I might have screwed that.
Love it.
Classic.
Love it.
That's good.
So if you had your time over, would you choose a different location, or
No, he loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sick.
But I'd choose a different drink.
Love it.
Where's that self-awareness I gave you rap about?
Love it. And mate, lastly, forever home. Where do you think the forever home is?
No such thing.
Oh, love it.
No such thing.
Why is that?
Because I love real estate. I love real estate for real estate, and I've never needed. So on average, I've never stayed anywhere apart from when I was a kid for longer than 2 years. My place now that I live in now, we've owned for 7, but that's an anomaly.
Yeah.
And I'm not attached to houses as home. Home, it's such a cliche, but home is absolutely where my family is.
Yep.
The end.
Yep.
Love it.
Cool.
I've recently, as in the last few years, I lived in an apartment that was 2 bedrooms and had a ball. And the forever home, not a concept that I'm interested in.
Is it more based on where you are in life at that present moment and the vibe you're feeling?
You know what drives me is freedom, and I really love the freedom of being able to bounce around. So spend time down the coast, spend time in Byron Bay, spend time in Bondi, have some time to be overseas. That appeals to me much more than having all of my eggs in a basket where it's my perfect house. Because one, I'm a designer. I'm never going to have the perfect house. I'm always going to want the thing that I've just done this one. I don't want that anymore. I'm going to sell it and do the next thing.
That's right.
So true.
So it just doesn't exist for me.
Love it. And mate, last question for value to any buyers out there. What's one final tip to, I guess, buyers coming into 2023?
God. I don't want to be flippant because it's really rough. It's really it's a really scary time.
Yeah.
Like if you're dealing with interest rates, be conservative. Be as conservative as the banks are going to be, because we don't know where interest rates are going to go for the next couple of years. We have no idea. So don't over leverage yourself for a start.
That's a good tip.
And research, due diligence. Just make sure you know what you're buying, where you're buying, what's driving the growth factors, what's going to stop them. Understand things before you jump, especially now, because it is more precarious now than it's been for a really long time. And those good days of real estate agents, I'm pointing at you guys, being able to sell things, because the market used to just used to sell. Like property used to just go up in value, and it would always be worth more if you waited. And that's not the market we're in.
Great
so
tip.
True.
Unreal. Well, mate, as we wrap up, me and Crossy really appreciate your time, Darren. Thanks for popping in, stopping on the Gold Coast. Quick shout out. Where is this? And how can people get in touch with this new prize home?
All right.
It's an absolute banger, by the way.
Have you seen it?
Oh, in Tallabudra, isn't it?
Yeah. So 5 bedrooms, 3.5 bathrooms, 2 lounge rooms. I've designed every facet of it. It's on, I think, 1 flat usable acre or something.
Yeah.
It's got a 6-bedroom carport, yoga studio, work from home space, resort size pool, cubby house. It's established gardens. It is a dream. It's a dream. I love this house. Like it is actually absolutely what I would do in that environment for that brief. Funnily enough.
Yep.
So yourtown.com.au. If you don't know how many people have won these things by buying 1 ticket.
Yeah. Wow. Legit, eh?
I've met them.
I've heard.
Really?
Yeah.
I've met them. One of the people the person that dropped me off here was a winner.
Wow.
No way.
And I've met winners, and plenty of people have paid $15 for 1 ticket and won something that's changed their life. This is $6.2 million worth of prize. All right, that's 50 grand worth of gold bullion, and then all the real estate. It is life changing, and it's so yourtown.com.au, $15. It's drawn on 23rd of December. You can see it online. You can see it on their socials. You'll see it on my socials, Darren Palmer Official on Instagram. You'll definitely see it on my socials because I am going to be smashing it on socials because I'm super proud of it.
That's a crack at home.
And it is going to be drawn on the 23rd of December, and somebody is definitely going to win it.
Unreal.
I've just realised why I haven't been winning all this time. I've been buying 2 or 3 tickets.
Mate, I buy 10.
There you go.
But I buy them in my husband's name because that's a PR nightmare if I ever won.
Yeah. Good point. That's a good point.
I've seen
great, worthy charity.
It is a worthy charity.
We always, my wife and I, we always buy, and hopefully, I'm just waiting for the name to get plucked out.
And I'll tell you what, knowing now that Darren actually come in with the hinges, mate, there'll be no stone left unturned. There'll be structurally the best home on the Gold Coast. I'd say.
We built it from the ground up.
Oh, I love it.
It's a cracker. Yeah. If you want to see it, you can walk through it, but definitely check it out online. It's not hard to find. Just yourtown.com.au.
Yep.
Legendary. Awesome, Darren,
Good on you, mate.
Appreciate your
So good to
time.
meet you.
Pleasure. Thanks, guys.
See you, mate.
Legend.